welcome to Castle of Horror, the show dedicated to horror movies and awesomeness. This week, we kick off a retrospective on the Waxwork movies. This is episode 323. From Denver, Colorado, I'm your host, Jason Henderson, publisher at Castle Bridge Media. With me from Austin is Tony Salvaggio, tech director at Rooster Teeth, lead singer and bassist of the band Deserts of Mars, and lead guitarist of the band Rise from Fire. Say hello, Tony.
Howdy.
Howdy. Welcome back. And also in Austin, Mr. Drew Edwards is the writer-creator of the long-running underground comic Halloween Man, currently published by Comixology. He is the Best Writer Ringo nominee, Austin Chronicle Best of Austin Award winner, and a member of the PEN America Fellowship. Say hello, Drew.
Would you like a closer look?
I would love a closer look. I want a closer look at that waistcoat that he's wearing, because that's pretty great. And finally, also in Denver, color commentary from Julia Guzman of Guzman Immigration of Denver. Say hello.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. Happy New Year to everyone. It feels like it's been a long time, although actually I think it was only it was like 2 weeks ago. It was like 2 weeks ago, but it's been a long 2 weeks. So, and that's not a complaint. I'm just saying. So,
nice,
all right.
Nice 2 weeks.
Yeah, but welcome back. If you haven't seen today's movie, we're going to be talking about it from the perspective of horror fans who have seen it. So warning, spoilers ahead. Waxwork is a 1988 American comedy horror film written and directed by Anthony Hickox in his directorial film debut and starring Zach Galligan, Deborah Foreman of Valley Girl, Michelle Johnson, David Warner, Dana Ashbrook, and the one and only Patrick Macnee. It is said to be partially inspired by the 1924 German silent film Waxworks. So, Waxwork. This is actually one, Drew, that I'm glad we're doing. It's something that I believe that you held close to your heart, and it may well be that I'm just confused, and you actually have talked about it a number of times, but you don't like it. I don't know, but you're going to go first. So let's get our opening thoughts from Drew, Julia, Tony, and then I'll go. Drew.
No, you did not imagine that. I do really like this movie. I think it's a lot of fun. It's got a good. You just mentioned the cast. It's got a very good cast for an 80s horror movie cast. I guess got some fun gore, some fun makeup effects. I like these, even though this is very thoroughly an 80s movie, I like the affection that this movie clearly has for Hammer and Universal, as well as, old time, Vincent Price movies, particularly House of Wax. I would, however, understand why this movie might not be to everybody's taste, because it is tonally kind of all over the place, and almost every actor in it is playing it very big. Like there's not very many performances in this movie that I wouldn't quantify as being scenery chewing, but I really enjoy watching this movie. This is actually usually a movie I watch in the month of October, because I feel like it's got a very Halloween-y vibe, and it's almost kind of a quasi anthology movie with all the different sections of the different monsters. It's even like, it's got everything you'd want out of an 80s monster movie, but it's also got like these like there's a full-on swashbuckling sword fight. How can you not love that? So I don't know. I would, if I were to say anything about this movie, I would say it's just a fun romp. Is it the most intellectually engrossing movie of all time? Definitely not. But it's fun. If you like the classic monsters, there's going to be a lot of stuff here for you to enjoy. If you like 80s special effects driven horror, there's definitely, ample amounts of that, makeup effects and blood and guts and things like that. So, it just hits me on a lot of levels of different things that I enjoy. So it's kind of an epicenter of that. And I could ramble on and on about it, but we're going to be talking about it probably for an hour and a half. Yeah. So I'll let Julia take over.
Julia, go for it. What are your opening thoughts?
Well, I have mixed feelings about this film, as you might imagine, because it is super gory, and you guys know I don't like gory things. And there's some things that made me really uncomfortable. The whole Marquis de Sade story. It's just, I don't know. I was very conflicted about that, because I'm like, well, it's glorifying violence, but it's also Marquis de Sade. That's what kind of what he was about, so I don't know, that one I was very uncomfortable with it. But I like the what's the word, that for the framing device. I like the idea that there's this random waxwork, as they keep calling it, a wax museum that's appeared in a neighborhood, and it exists in the house, and it's a bunch of sets from basically horror movies or horror situations. And the victims are in each of the stories are pulled from the people who enter the house. They just kind of become part of this. I think it's a great idea. I think it's a neat framing device. I thought that the stories were kind of cool for the most part. The acting I didn't think was very good. The writing I didn't think was very good. But some of the effects are just amazing. So I have very like one thumb up, one thumb down, I guess. Or whatever. But yeah, it's interesting. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Excellent. Tony, what are your thoughts? I assume you've seen this film before.
Yeah, it's been a while. I'm with Drew. Like, I really like it, but I also think everybody's mileage may vary depending on how much you want to watch a really broad horror comedy. And I think it's got a lot of great bits. And what I come away from, because it's a little bit of a mess sometimes watching it now.
Yeah.
Like watching it objectively. And, if anybody involved in the movie ever listen to this, what do you mean it's a mess? Like, I like how gleefully it feels like, and even in the credits where there's hey, thanks to all these horror icons, this is someone who's this is a collection of people making a film with a true affection for the genre and have set out to just, we're gonna everything in the kitchen sink, which goes back and forth, like there's some inconsistencies here and there, and it's kind of, each one has its own kind of filmic look. I was kind of laughing because the Dracula part feels like it could also have been a Red Shoe Diaries,
yes,
the way it's filmed, which is of the era.
Tony, let me tell you something. I have a movie right here on my shelf called Emmanuel Meets Dracula, because I have like every Dracula film. And yes, it is. Yeah, they look the same. They may well have been filmed on the same day.
It sort of feels like that. It just, but I really dig on it. It does have a collection of some of the worst people in it. Not acting wise, but like I felt a little ashamed to share the namesake of Tony with that one character, because he just
yeah.
But I like that we're just gonna go all out, especially because it kind of starts as even with the way the Waxwork, the head of the Waxwork is dressed in like a Willy Wonka outfit. Like it starts as like this horror Charlie and the Chocolate Factory in a way, very deliberately. And then, goes even crazier than that. But yeah, I really like the movie, but I don't know if it's everybody's cup of tea. And it, maybe could have been slightly more focused, but then I think you lose that kind of, we're just going to make it all aspect to it. And I think that's, when you go all in like that, you can see the passion in it. And I think that's one of the reasons why it wins out. It's not as tongue-in-cheek as it might. Other directors might have gone a lot more cheeky with it, a lot more wink but the homage in it is more of, I want to make my thing, and I want to make this other thing that I like, and I want to make this other thing that I like, and all of it feels genuine, and that's what I dig about it. That's just really awesome. Cool effects, like the practical effects. People spend a lot of hard work and time on that, and it shows. I really enjoy it.
Yeah, according to the IMDb, the guy who did the monster effects, Bob Keane, spent 18 hours a day for 8 weeks working on the monsters. So he really did work his ass off.
Well,
whereas the writer,
made like 5 movies here.
Whereas Anthony Hickox wrote the screenplay in 3 days. So there you go.
Right. That's always
great. Yeah.
That's always the thing. Like, I mean, you see it in comics where people are like, whose job is tougher, the writer or the artist or whatever. I'm like, well, the artist is going to sit in front of a desk for like a long time, a lot longer than I've spent writing. So,
some writers take a long time to write it, but in this case, that was not the case.
No, and you're absolutely not wrong, and they're just so. It's such even if you're rewriting, you're still, I guarantee you, not going to be taking 18 hours a day for 8 weeks. It's just a different kind of work.
Makeup effects are a very involved business. And
Unless you have a
Especially with-
whole staff that you trust so incredibly, you're going to be there every moment, sticking your fingers and stuff.
Well, yeah, I mean, and especially with this, there's a lot of involved suits, and
Yeah.
just
that must have been
selling the hell out
that
of
would
it.
have been fun to just get a tour of the work there.
Mhm.
That sounds really great. I really just want to get into it. I think this is a movie to start with. I think this is a movie that I could watch over and over again. I do agree that tonally it's not to my taste. There's too many like wacky sound effects and stuff like that I just don't think is necessary.
You're gonna have to define what you mean by that, because for the longest time I thought I understood what you meant by when you say wacky sound effects, but I've come around to thinking that I don't.
Okay.
So
No, that's fair.
at some point during this podcast, I want to know.
Well, I'll tell you one that pops to mind instantly. There's a little person who is a funny actor, but he's hamming it up, right? But every time he
Like
does
everyone in this movie,
yeah. But every time he does his deep bow, for some reason they do this weird like cat o' nine tails whip sound that I don't completely understand. And I don't get it. I can't imagine anybody saying, "Oh, when he bowed, it made a whip sound," and I'm laughing now. I can't. The comedy doesn't compute in whatever
Yeah,
Maybe
well,
I'm
I mean, what you're saying, what you're talking about is a lot of times where we're gonna sell it by adding in an extra womp womp or slide
Yes.
whistle,
Exactly.
or really on the nose. Like that's the things that you tend to react to, like,
Yeah.
and I
It's just
get
not
it.
necessary because it's
Right.
already. He's funny in himself. You think about like Alec Guinness in Scrooge, which we did last year. And Alec Guinness acts with his body and seems to float as Marley, right? And just imagine how ruined that performance would be if they had added in a lot of extra like just business and sound effects and stuff.
I think though, I'm not saying that you're wrong to be put off by that. I'm not.
We can just start right out with tone. So those are my opening thoughts. So continue your thoughts.
I think it does depend on what tone you're going for, because like
Yes.
if you look at some of the performances, most of the performances, I would say, dare I say, all of them, there is like an added veneer of like cartoonishness. And, I think the very beginning exchange between, Zach Galligan and the woman playing his mom is so just sort of elevated. Like it's not how real people behave. It seems like something out of a John Waters movie.
Yeah, that's right. Or sometimes David Lynch will deliberately go for having people, speak in an elevated way. Or who's another good example of that?
Obviously this person, obviously Hickox here was influenced at least a little bit by Sam Raimi.
Yes. Do you think so? Do you think that's sort of a?
It's hard to say because it's so close to one another, relatively speaking, but he in the credits he names drops a bunch of other relatively contemporary horror directors in the thank yous, which he thanks both Spielberg and Joe Dante. So it's hard for me to believe that he hasn't seen Evil Dead.
The two finest performances in this movie, and this shocks me to say, are by David Warner and Miles O'Keefe. Miles O'Keefe should not be the finest actor in this film who is not David Warner. And yet he's actually quite restrained as Count Dracula. So it's just amazing. Whereas Zach Galligan, who's a fantastic actor, is turning in a super crazy, broad, sputtering, "What? You went out with him, blah, blah, blah." The characters, I got to say, actually, it gets cleaner. I know that films are not made chronologically, right? So we don't know at what point anything was filmed. Having said that, the opening scenes where all the young people are sitting around together on the bleachers and joshing one another and whatever, it feels like these actors are not turning in the performances that they're perhaps capable of. But the movie,
I legitimately believe though that this is how they were taught they were told to act, because
That's possible.
like it's so big. Like the one girl, China, like, you know, randomly breaking into like a Marilyn Monroe impression, you know, like
Yes.
stuff like that. Like, you know, it just feels so big. And
right. Well, sure. Yeah. And they're making these there's sort of a really broad, this is complicated because obviously the kids are telling one another jokes, right? And trying to make one another laugh, but it feels forced. And I'm just saying that, you know, Dana Ashbrook, who's playing Tony, that kid knows how to act. I mean, he was really great on Twin Peaks. So maybe it is directing. Maybe he's like, hey, let's maybe the director is like, hey, make it like a sketch or something. I don't know. I
also kind of wonder, although I will say John, before we get to the secret, John Rhys Davies is definitely better than Miles O'Keefe.
Okay. All right. Fair enough.
But I also have long had a theory about this movie, particularly the way that the school was shot, is that I think in the original draft, these kids were supposed to be high school kids, especially since they're all still living with their parents. And then, you know, when they actually hired actors, they were like, oh, no, that maybe they went... Amazingly, for an 80s horror film, someone went, no one's going to believe anybody in this movie is a high school kid. Yeah. And then so they made them college kids in like the last second.
I think you must be right. Boy, I hadn't thought about that at all.
I could see that.
So just to recap for the listener, so we've just been talking about the opening couple scenes. We'll go to the
it has a great opening scene before that where a guy gets his head caught on fire.
Yes.
And the rest of it, he falls into a fireplace while the artifact.
Man, talk about an amazing effect. I cannot imagine being the stunt person who has that job. Like, you know, who has to stand up waving his arms madly with his head and his shoulders on fire. I get that there is special stuff that they wear, but that is a terrifying job.
Right.
I mean, it's still dangerous.
That was horrific. That's such a horrible way to start. I was like, anyway. Whatever.
I mean, by this time, I think, and there's probably historians who would tell me, I think by now there's fire gel that's safer, which is why we see more fire effects around this time. But even then, that's not anytime you do a fire gag, that you have to do a lot of preparation. It's not a thing if any director, any stunt coordinator knows, it's not something you take lightly.
Yeah.
Well, strangely enough, one of the stunt coordinators on this movie is Kane Hodder, who famously was Jason Voorhees, but also famously does a lot of fire stunts, even though he has some pretty severe burns all over his body. So I would imagine, I don't know the history of this movie well enough to say that like he, if he had anything to do with the fire stunt here, but I if he did, I would imagine he would have made sure that everything was.
Oh yeah, I mean, you do it safely, and you can tell. But wow, is it? I mean, what a crazy opening!
That is.
I mean, you're going for broke.
People fighting in the drawing room of a great house, and one guy gets his head thrust into a fire, and then the other guy, who we don't see, basically raids the house.
Well, it's not, but he catches on fire, and then he falls face first into a fireplace and just kind of sits there and lays there.
His head
gets dead.
Yeah.
I mean, it's. But all that is
he gets shoved into the fireplace head first. Then he stands up, screams or whatever, like just
waves his arms around.
Then he falls back in the fire.
That's
like
to sell a bit, so that you can see the awesome bit, and then down he goes.
Now, Jason, something you hit upon though, at the kind of way that the actors play this. Contextually, though, there's a lot of... They're taking a cue, I think, from a lot of comedy, teen comedy, or teen-oriented comedy. There weren't necessarily teens in them, of this time. And, like, even back to, like, some of the early 80s stuff.
I mean, like Porky's and stuff?
Not exactly Porky's, but... what's the name of the scavenger hunt one?
I think that was called Midnight...
Midnight Madness, right?
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah. But
Canadian film, I believe. Anyway,
the way that everybody interacts and the way the comedy is directed has that kind of feel. Or like Student Bodies also, which was more of a parody and less... And this is played way more straight than Student Bodies.
I never saw Student Bodies.
That one, your mileage may vary, but there's bits. There's definitely bits in that I still laugh a lot, even though it's definitely of it. Like there's a tight time period. Some of it plays better now than others, but it's worth at least checking out. Because I know what you like in comedy, it may not be your bag,
Right.
but there's a lot of they're playing their roles in kind of that. It's a certain type of horror comedy that, again, what I like though is it's not all wink at the screen. It just has a flavor that is very much a 1988 horror comedy flavor.
Yeah,
And
well, I mean,
it's
and
hard
let me
to
point out,
describe, but when you see it, I instantly knew, oh, this is the movie I'm getting. Even
Right.
though, again, I was really annoyed at the characters. But each character has a specific role that is in a horror movie of its time. Only in this time it's played for comedy, but there's, rich kid,
Yes.
but the virgin girl, the
less
kind of
virgin
sluttier
girl,
the
the sort of doofus
guy who's kind of cool, but he's kind of dorky as well.
Yeah.
Definitely Tony was definitely of a chess king, a chess king shopper. And then the couple where the guy's kind of the rock and roll kind of guy.
Yeah. You're right.
Probably into horror movies too.
In my memory, he has like a mullet and earrings.
Yeah.
But which is kind of I always feel like that couple stands out because like the other thing that's kind of peculiar about this movie is all of the kids kind of have this weird 1950s flavor to them, which I know was a thing in the late 80s. There was like a resurgence of that kind of like aesthetic, but like even in the way like they talk, it does have kind of a flavor of like an even older movie.
And you'll see that kind of mirrored in Night of the Creeps has that.
Oh yeah,
almost revival style.
Yes.
It's 80s, but it's got enough 50s. Well, again, it goes back to what we've talked about before, where you go, hey, what was the stuff I liked? What was so. There's all this horror
and I applaud
from that era.
If this guy wants to write a script that's borrowing from the 50s, I can dig all that. And the funny thing is, I sound like I'm complaining about all the comedy, but this movie is tonally a little inconsistent. I think it gets better as it goes along. But like,
I think as it goes along, what happens is they keep ramping up how crazy it is.
Yeah.
So like the crazy character, the sort of craziness of the way everybody acts starts to seem more subdued.
That may very well be. That may completely be. And you also recognize along the way that the movie is playing for laughs, and that's kind of okay. I mean, because if you think of like this is 88, so this is 3 years after Lost Boys. Lost Boys has a hell of a lot of comedy in it, but it's played way straighter than this. I mean, Lost Boys has comedy, has comic relief, I guess, or intermittent humor and dumb lines like Death by Stereo and so forth, but it has no sense of camp. Whereas this movie has a very high camp quotient. And in my mind, now all of a sudden I'm thinking of like some kind of a graph, like some sort of Gantt chart of, camp versus comedy and what have you. But okay, yeah. So we established early on, Zach Galligan is a rich guy. It doesn't really matter other than that he's connected to the family that owns this big house, which we'll come to understand later is important. And he has a troop of friends, and the girls on like the two girls, one that he's been dating apparently on and off, and the other that is just a hanger-on in his group. They come across what everybody in this town calls a waxwork in the middle of a residential neighborhood, which is a wacky thing. I mean, it's very strange.
Just appeared like they talked about, like it wasn't there a couple of days ago, basically.
And then suddenly it is a big, beautiful house that with a giant sign on it says Waxwork. This is a side note. I don't want to waste too much time on it, but everybody in this movie uses this word waxwork, and I have to tell you, maybe I'm just ignorant, but I have never heard that word before except in this movie. Is that a normal word? Is that like
I've used it before, but I don't know if it's because of seeing this movie. I mean, I definitely
you go to a wax museum.
I call it a wax museum first,
right?
But
it's like having an art gallery called paintings, I guess.
Yeah. But the other thing I think is this always has me thinking about is, and I actually even put this question up on Twitter: has there ever been a non-evil wax museum in film history.
Okay, so let's think about that for a second. And also, while we're at it, let's think of just our favorite.
Or in
wax-
general. I mean, I think I saw that
General.
I saw that thread, and I'm like, waxwork are creepy by nature. Like you don't nobody. There's very very few people who are like, you know what? I would be totally cool if I had to stay here overnight. No one.
I would completely be down for that.
Oh, listen, can we do that as a party, Drew? Someday, can we figure out how the four of us can like stay
don't
all
count me
night?
in. No,
and watch
do not include me in that.
I want to do that when COVID is over. I want us to stay overnight. I don't know who I have to pay, but I want to camp out at a wax. That is what a great idea. Well, there's Ripley's in Dallas Fort Worth. Maybe.
Yeah, but you can't spend the night there, I don't think.
Right, but
Well,
either way, most
I love wax museums, but I would not want to spend the night in one. No, I love them. I went to the one in Hollywood. I've gone twice now, and it's super fun. Yeah,
that's
I'm
true.
a fan.
Most people find it. In fact, he kind of goes over that because while there are the ones that are just, hey, here's the Hall of Presidents or whatever.
Yeah.
In general, the thing that gets people showing up are here's a medieval torture, here's the stuff that you can't see on a screen, or the stuff that really is very I don't know, just more non-traditional, people, because he even goes, it was more normal, but people want to see the torture and violence, and that's kind of where things go usually. And I think that's why people think of them as creepy, is because the idea is like, oh, let's go to the waxwork, or let's go to the wax museum.
Well, there's also that sort of uncanny valley thing about wax figures.
Exactly.
This bit of this observation that people make. Why all these images of horror? Oh, it's what gets the visitors through the door. That kind of moral argument it's the 80s and they're having it, but I've heard that argument had by characters in the Vincent Price movies, and even all the way back. It's very similar to arguments that are had in one of the in Mad Love. There was something like that, right? And also there's a class.
I mean, that whole thing where it's the woman has their wax figure, and there's other displays, and then that wax figure is also part of a show that is torture.
They have a little Waxworks there in Mad Love. Yeah, so the funny thing is this idea of wax figures being a mass entertainment that we are slightly ashamed of, but that's slightly trashy, but also a very skillful and very and beloved by everybody. That's super interesting, and it's still here, except for what's interesting about these kids is that these kids are like super duper privileged. So I think we're meant to kind of forget it a little bit because we get wrapped up in just hanging out with them, but these are a bunch of super rich kids, and they're engaging in this activity that is more associated with like just the mass classes of decades earlier than this is taking place in. There's early in the movie we have business with Zach Galligan struggling at college. There's some fun
with his Nazi teacher, apparently.
Yes, right. The Nazi teacher, the gag here is that he's got a big Nazi flag and is teaching about the history of, I guess, the Nazi party, and yelling with a big sort of Hitler accent and so forth. And I don't know, I don't know, maybe that was common. I actually in college did have a German professor this is a high school German teacher who would do a Hitler impression and everybody laughed. That's horrible.
Well, this guy though, it doesn't seem like he's doing it on purpose. It's also kind of funny. He has fascism spelt wrong.
Oh, really? That's hilarious. That's really, really funny. It would be more hilarious if it were a tattoo, but still, that would be awesome.
Yeah, on the chalkboard, it's taken dozens of viewings because I've seen this movie a number of times, but this time I noticed, oh wait, it's got fascism spelt wrong on the chalkboard.
He has a really great bit where in the same college room where he later rescues Jennifer Foreman out of the room by coughing and doing a bunch of funny shtick.
But that was so dumb.
You thought it was dumb? I actually thought that was a cute scene. I dug that. It reminded me of Ferris Bueller or The Freshman or other stuff like that. But anyway, I don't know what the point of all of this is other than just give you sort of their regular world. But there is a running bit in the film where he's assigned to write a long paper on Lithuania, which for reasons unexplained, he gives to his maid, who only slightly speaks English, although to her credit, she is able to write a very long essay on Lithuania. But it's
apparently it's not very good. I don't know why he didn't assign the butler to do the thing, because that guy probably spoke a lot better English.
Yes, his butler seems quite sophisticated. That doesn't
anyway, that was really funny. She's just like, I felt bad for her. She's like, oh my gosh, I worked so hard and I have to get up and do breakfast and all. She's just like, and then like here. And it says, it's just like super, it was just really funny.
Yes.
Funny, but also
it's something
sad.
like fascists are the bad people with the little mustaches. I don't know. It's very
Shout
silly.
That was silly also.
But, okay. So
I liked the scene. So we set up that Zach is super rich because he's sitting at one of those ridiculous dining tables that have like the giant centerpiece in the middle, and then the people who are eat on the opposite end, so they can't see each other. So they keep looking around the centerpiece.
I'm not rich enough to know if this is a real thing.
It's in every movie and TV show that I've ever watched where there's super rich people. They have a giant table and they sit at opposite ends. And so he's like, she says, that he can't have coffee, and he's like, I need caffeine, and she says, well, I'll think about it. And then he goes out, and immediately the butler gives him his coffee and his cigarettes.
Yes.
I don't know. It's just it was a good. I liked that introduction of that character. It was pretty memorable.
It tells us also who the audience of this movie is. The audience of the movie is clearly us, the most likely the middle class. Where. Because otherwise you wouldn't be laughing at the rich. It's to make you aware. Look how stupid they are, and because all of this is nonsense. Anyway,
I think you could go so far as to say, if you were to do a cross section, I would say horror, and especially horror comedy, is for the middle class.
Yes,
like you could make that assumption fairly easily. That is your target audience. Like if you
for sure, yeah, it is. You would often say it's lowest common denominator, except for that this movie is not a lowest common denominator movie. This movie is trying real hard to remind us of a lot of things that Hickox is just into. He's worked way harder here than he needed to turn in a horror movie. When he's
apparently he didn't. Apparently he only spent 3 days.
Well, that's true. That's
a
very, very good point.
Yeah.
But he's got references to, Rosemary's Baby. He's got They Live, like about the crazy baby. There's this thing is chock-a-block with references. I have to say, I really admire that. That's super.
Sorry, Jason, I hate to be that guy, but It's Alive is
what did I say?
They Live.
Oh, well, all right. So yes, the crazy baby from They Live. Or no, the crazy baby from It's Alive.
No,
How can I not?
You. That happened to me like the last time. Now it's you.
Yeah.
It's catching, apparently.
Golly. Well, the funny thing about They Live is that title has never really stuck very well in my brain because it's about alien invaders, which there's no doubt that they live. That's not. It's a very strange, inexact.
I'll have to fight. I'll put the shade. I'll have to get you to say It's Alive. We'll fight for 15 minutes.
Just say It's Alive. Do me a favor.
It's Alive.
It's Alive.
It's Alive. For 15 minutes. It'll be great. Meanwhile, put on the shades as well if you can.
Yes. So yeah. Anyway, okay. So the real. The next act really begins in earnest. The girls have been invited to bring 6 friends to the Wax Museum by David Warner. So David Warner, as you mentioned, is a very mysterious, wry figure who is kind of floating above everybody else. And we know the plot of this is a temporary thing. He's set up this wax museum. It is really a giant wax ritual for him to be able to bring back the people who are recreated in a number of the exhibits in the wax museum. And he's going to do that by luring in, like spiders, 18 victims. That's it. That's all he's got to do. So the rest is just, he doesn't need to be it to be popular or anything like that. He just needs...
I wonder how he found this out. Like, who told him, hey, if you want a bunch of horror movies to come to life, just bring us 18 victims. How did that message get
I'll bet
conveyed?
you that Drew can recap David Warner's bad guy plot for us. It starts with stealing a bunch of
He's
a bunch
stealing
of stuff.
he's stealing items that belong to the 18 most evil people that ever lived. And then he is creating wax effigies of them with the real items in them. Then he is offering up people's souls, 18 people's souls, to then resurrect these monsters or evil people, in which they're going to have an epic evil team up and take over the world.
Very well done.
That was great. There you go.
Yeah,
You're welcome.
I love the shot, and apparently it was supposed to be different, and then they had to change it. But I love the shot when the who was it that says this? Hang on, let me find this. Jonathan, it says, is looking at the exhibit of the Phantom of the Opera, and he goes, "Oh, like in the movie, it's like they made the Phantom of the Opera into a movie." He's like so horrified, but apparently that was supposed to be a Jason Voorhees exhibit, and then they couldn't get the permission to use Jason Voorhees for legal reasons.
Really?
So so you're supposed to say they made a movie out of Jason Voorhees, but
that is funny. Interesting. Well, that I was fine with it, although I was like, oh, so wow.
I think as much as I love, although it's kind of funny because they had the actual Jason working on this movie, but I think having the Phantom of the Opera fits better with what they're doing with this movie, because most of what they have are these classical, even the real world figures like Marquis de Sade and Jack the Ripper are from another tradition. And I think having like Jason or Freddy, especially in the 80s, would have felt too contemporary. I think now you might be able to get away with that more because, as painful as it is for me to say this, that the 80s is now the romantic past, but definitely when this came out, I think having Jason would have actually kind of taken you out of the movie a little bit, but the Phantom of the Opera works perfectly.
That's an excellent point, and I agree with you. So it's a happy accident, although it does make the script sort of weird because it means that these guys live in a world. I guess David Warner might just not be familiar with movies.
I think he's just been busy doing evil
stuff. Sure,
he isn't up on pop culture for some reason,
right? Which is fine. That's totally fine. So we really get to the meat. What Save the Cat refers to a sequence of any film called the promise of the premise. It's that you see a poster of a movie and it says, what happens in this movie? And you see the picture and you go, I think that's what happens in this movie, and and you have a big sequence in the middle of the film where people get that thing, at least for a while. That's what the movie becomes about. And that's what happens here. And it is the thing that would make me pop this movie on and play it probably fairly regularly because it's really neat. And that is that one by one, like people who are getting stalked by a slasher, instead people wander into the exhibits in the Wax Museum and they're in other worlds and they, things go poorly for them.
By the way, another thing I like a lot, in addition to the practical effects, is a lot of animated, all the portal stuff where they go through the other dimensions.
They like poke at the air and stuff like that. Yeah.
Well, it's the little like blue, portal effects and stuff. That's cool. I love those process, drawn overlaid. That stuff's rad.
I think as broad as he plays it, the first guy who goes into the Wolfman exhibit, the way he reacts, even though it's played very broadly, to me is very honest to what I think the way a lot of people would act if they were in the situation is that they would keep rationalizing it. They'd first go, "Oh, I must have hit my head," or "Oh, somebody slipped me some drugs." "Oh, wait, I've been hypnotized. This is all illusion." Yeah. I really do think that there are quite a few people, if they found themselves in this situation, they bumble their way around it, trying to come up with a rational explanation until it was too late, like this guy did.
I would absolutely do that. I mean, I would come up with wow, this is some sort of really clever, some really clever exhibit that I've walked into that somehow is making me believe that I'm walking around.
Yeah, like the one guy who's like, "Oh, it's drugs," or maybe
Right.
Hologram? No, it can't be. Yeah.
Yes. So
exactly.
I completely agree with that. And it's cool, and it's a sad scene. This is where Jonathan Rhys Davies comes in, where Rhys Davies is basically playing Lawrence Talbot. There's references to like family members. There's and Rhys Davies is in this room, and the moon is going to rise soon, and he's going to become a werewolf, and it's an opportunity to sort of replay bits from the Wolfman, with hunters coming who are going to shoot at him and yada yada, but also to replay bits from recent Wolfman movies, which I find fascinating because it means, yeah, go ahead.
The werewolf design is way more, the Howling, the fact that, so the whole plot engine here is that these are quote unquote evil people, but I do kind of wonder, is this Larry Talbot archetypical character, does he really count as like an evil? I'm probably thinking about this much harder than anybody who worked on the movie did.
I mean, yes, but here we are. Yeah, they should have just said famous monsters.
It seems to me that you would have a situation somewhat like Monster Squad, where he might work with the other monsters when he's a werewolf, but when he's a person, he probably would be actively like sabotaging what their world domination plot, I guess.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Nevertheless, it goes badly. I think I'm surprised when I'm watching.
It goes badly because that guy's help, the hunter's help, is an idiot.
Right.
Like, I've never seen anybody go. It seems like he's done this before, except if that guy's dropping the silver bullets all the time.
Right.
Like when that guy dies, you're like, man, you brought this on yourself.
He doesn't even load that damn gun until he gets into this
the guy
cabin where he thinks it's a werewolf.
And then goes, he gets crushed. But I found it, that's all because he was too stupid to hand bullets to someone.
Yes.
It was harder for me to feel any remorse.
That's a great effect, Tony. I mean, that's an amazing, where the werewolf grabs the younger character, his assistant, it's the hunter's assistant, son, we don't know. Anyway, he grabs him and pulls his head apart.
Well, crushes his head and then pulls it apart. It's amazing.
It's an amazing effect. Just a nutty, crazy effect that, this is one of the places where you're kind of glad that this is being played as broadly comedic as it is, because otherwise it would maybe be too harsh to take, because it's a hardcore effect. Yes. So, but Dana Ashbrook, who plays Tony, unfortunately, he does get bit and he does turn into a werewolf, and the hunter finally shoots him as well, and we're out. And it's exactly the way Drew says. At this moment, it really feels like we've walked into a torture garden, which, by the way, remember, was about a wax museum where a scene happens and then we go bink and then we're back in the wax museum. Love it. I love all of this stuff. This is really cool. What's the next one after the?
That's when they do Dracula.
Oh yeah, that's when Dracula comes. Dracula ditches almost all of the comedy bits because now Sexy China walks into the Dracula exhibit, and the way it always happens is maybe the rope in front of the exhibit drops, or maybe you just step in on your own. But she walks in, and immediately she walks through the sort of portal, and she's in the Dracula world, and she's got an awesome dress, and she's invited to dine with Dracula and his son, as referenced in Monster Mash, and all of the vampire brides, and they're just going to hang out and be Dracula people, and eat steak tartare. Supposedly, I looked this up. I don't know from steak tartare, but
steak tartare is more.
It's like shaved.
Yeah, it doesn't look like that.
It does not look like this.
No, steak tartare, and you only, most people are only gonna eat X amount of rare.
Right.
Eat. The whole point is she's trying to make a go of it, I guess, to not be rude. But
she calls it steak tartare. It's not steak tartare.
Dracula. Well, we find out what it is, but
it's chunks of meat and blood, and we'll find out who's in a bit. But the funny thing is, he goes, "Is it not to your liking?" And she says, "I like steak tartare," and he seems to have almost a humor to it. He goes, "Steak tartare, yes." It's just it's funny. And again, Miles O'Keefe, not by any means a favorite actor, although I thought he was perfectly fine as a hunky Tarzan in like 1981. But
Sure.
he's got a good look about him. As he kind of looks like if you were doing a vampire in an anime to me.
Oh yeah.
yeah.
So again, the light until you get to the really super lit basement, which is like an asylum almost.
Holy
Strange,
shit,
austere
yes.
asylum. All the lighting is definitely like a Red Shoe Diaries-esque Skinamax.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's tonally different. I like that they chose these strange tonally different lighting schemes to offset everything. That's really fascinating. But it did give me kind of a laugh because it definitely plays up the I'm gonna give you sweltering looks.
Yes.
And yet this is also probably what I would say is the most, Julia was talking about the gore in this movie. To me, this is the most grotesque sequence in the whole bunch in terms of gore.
In a moment when she is chased around her bedroom by Dracula's son and she escapes down into the basement and finds out where the meat's coming from, all of a sudden we enter a level of horror that I have rarely seen. I mean, does anybody want to describe this so that I'm not just jabbering on myself? I mean, Drew, do you want to give us what the hell is going on in the basement?
So, and I don't know which version of this you talked about, by the way, because there's a version of this sequence depending on which if you watch it watch it on DVD versus if you watch it like there's a rated versus unrated version of this, and there's an even more violent version of this if you can believe it. So she goes into this weird Clockwork Orange butcher shop / basement that they have, which is all white, so it's very striking.
Yeah.
And this is why I can't completely dismiss this movie as just schlock. Like, there was some thought, however haphazardly the script was put together, there was some thought put together into the production design of this. So she comes into this all white butcher shop, and she comes across the guy who is her fiance in this world, and he has half of his leg just been like all the skin and muscle and gut has been completely chopped out of it, and that's presumably what they served everybody for dinner.
So gross, and there's like rat is eating it, like screaming. It's horrible.
It also reminds me of, there's this really poor taste, shocking video game called Chiller. And there's a bootleg. They made a bootleg of it for Nintendo. Like, Nintendo never approved it. But it was a game where you had like crossbow. There were the gun games of the 80s. And you shot, like, what made it the Chiller game is you actually shot people on racks and crushed their heads and pulled people apart and then shot them. And they would reveal, like, it's this 8-bit looking stuff. But it was always just so shocking at the time that somebody made this.
Yes.
Game. No PTA, no parent wanted you to go to the arcade that had a Chiller cabinet in it. But it was pretty amazing at the time. When you saw it, you couldn't believe, because again, you're crushing people's heads and flaying the flesh off them when you shot them with your crossbow. It's pretty insane.
That's
it reminded me, like, that's what I instantly thought of in the scene, because he's from the knee down, it's just bone. Everything's been flayed off.
So gross.
It's unbelievably. It's a very vivid moment. I mean, this betrays Hickox, imagination, because that is a very nightmarish image, because we can all identify with it. And then shortly,
why can't we all identify with it? Just because we all have legs?
Because we all like. It's very simple. This isn't.
That sort of stinging pain of like something like like him being bit by the rat. Like even if we haven't ever all been kidnapped by vampires and had our leg eviscerated, we know what it's like to have like a bug bite or being bit by a dog or something.
No, this is nothing like that. This is just so gross. I'm like, I don't identify with it at all.
What I mean is,
Well, obviously, it affects you on some level,
it
though. So
affects
there
me
is
a lot. Yeah. No, it's
that's
disgusting.
and that's all I'm talking about.
I wanted to
is
say
that some
though
effect-
about. I
yeah.
wanted to ask you guys. One of you made a point, or I think we might have Drew. I can't remember who it was. Made a point earlier about how the first couple of guys come in and they're like, "Whoa, what's going on? Like, what just happened?" Well, she's one of these where she pretty much immediately is like, "Oh, okay, I'm part of this world now." When
Right.
she first walks in,
Very
she's
good
like,
point.
she kind of looks down at her dress, like, "Huh," and then she's
Yes.
like, "Okay, I guess I have a fiance. I don't know, whatever." But it seems
I-
like she immediately kind
Really
of gets
good point.
sucked
Yeah.
into the
doesn't-
world, like, and especially the Marquis de Sade chick. She's really immediately in it. I don't know.
With this gal, like, I mean, she does talk about, like, how she wants an older older man to take her away from everything, and like kind of sort of like, okay, haha, of course she ends up in the Dracula exhibit,
Right.
but I just like,
I also saw it as almost instantly she's kind of enthralled by the Dracula
Right.
character. And so,
I mean, she definitely knows that something's amiss because,
right.
you
But
know,
there's
when
something
she
there. I
comes
always-
across, she comes across the quote unquote fiance, she's like, none of this is real, like
Yes.
but
yet she doesn't. So okay, so skipping to the end, shouldn't that pull her out of the? Shouldn't she be able to escape pretty easily? Shouldn't believe any of it's
So
real. Like
I
that
thought about
that whole
that.
thing at the end about how if you don't believe it's real, then you can get out.
I can
don't know.
only imagine that her defiance of it being real is insufficient. That she's basically too frightened to actually believe what is the truth, which is that this stuff is not real.
yeah, because
That's
Zach
the only
Galligan
reaction.
has like Zach Galligan has resolve,
Right. And he also
Um,
has figured it out. Whereas she's confused and she's in this. And like Tony says, Dracula has hypnotic magic and it permeates his castle. And so
she's hot for Creature.
Sure. And no, you can't underestimate. Miles O'Keefe looks like the cover of a Harlequin romance novel. I mean, it's amazing. He literally looks like a painting of himself.
As does the Marquis de Sade guy.
That's true.
Well, that guy definitely doesn't look like the real Marquis. Like there's a lot of liberty taken with the Marquis de Sade, who is like a buff pirate guy. And
Yeah.
this
with an almost like 80s hair metal hairdo.
yeah,
Yes.
like
Right.
like
And-
that is definitely not what the Marquis de Sade looked like.
He's dressed more like the way people kind of often present Saint Germain, and in Hotel Transylvania and all that stuff. But yes. So how does she get? Well, she doesn't get away. I mean, she winds up being vamped by Dracula. I mean, she puts on a really good show because she manages to fight all the other vampires with no experience whatsoever.
Right, but then Dracula, as Dracula does, just looks at her and she's like, "Oh, okay, we're doing this."
Yes. Yeah.
Well,
And that's the
I
end of her
think-
sequence.
I
And
think-
again, it's an anthology. We're back, into the Wax Museum for another bit.
I would have rather, talking about comparing this to the Marquis de Sade sequence, even though it gives the female character, the girlfriend character, whose name is escaping me at the moment, some stuff to play.
Sarah Brightman.
Sarah,
not to be confused
yeah.
with the opera singer,
It gives her some stuff to play through the rest of the movie. I would have almost rather them composite the Dracula and the Marquis de Sade stuff together because they play a bit similarly to me.
That's
and
true.
The Marquis de Sade is not a monster, so he doesn't exactly fit with the rest of the stuff. I mean, there
He's
is
also
Jack
not
the
a
Ripper.
murderer, I believe, in real life. I mean, he's into sadism, obviously, but he wasn't a killer. He did. I don't know. Somebody else can weigh in on whether they think this film is fair to the.
Well, I mean, they're taking historical liberties, but
Sure.
To me, honestly, like doing a Jack the Ripper sequence probably would have made a little bit more sense because at least it's, to me,
Well,
more
but
part.
remember
part of
though,
it.
Sarah is really into the Marquis de Sade, though. She's
Yeah.
totally. She's
that's
she's
the part where I
really.
was talking about when I said that I was super conflicted about it, because she's like, he's whipping her and she's like, I want, don't stop, I want more. And I guess that's a thing that exists, but I just really didn't want to see it. You know what I mean? That was just very
That's
disturbing.
totally a thing to exist, and if it's
Yep.
consensual, it's okay. But like, in this instance, I don't know that you can argue consent because she's been hypnotized.
And
Right.
she's chained.
Yeah.
Yeah, but she might have
Well,
wanted to be
there's
chained.
there's
But
there's
the
people who
the
want to be
hypnotism part is that
Well, they're
Yeah.
also playing a lot of the like, well, she's a virgin with a secret, even
Right.
from the beginning. So the Waxwork kind of plays that up. It's definitely a kind of an odd choice, because in most horror movies, that's just the character trope, and she, usually she ends up being the final girl as well. In this, because they decided for the whole Desaad thing, they start playing that up pretty quickly. I don't know. It's a strange choice, but it didn't bother me, but it's also like, okay, well, again, he's not a monster. I guess
Well,
there's
here he
something
is.
in
He's
it
going to
that
murder
it
her.
could be
He
evil
does
or-
say he's going to kill her.
Well, that's true.
And yeah, this version of the Marquis de Sade is like, I presume, a serial killer who is I guess.
I don't know. I mean, he seemed to just be carrying out the wishes of the prince, or whoever his, like, basically he's like a sadist for hire. So he will
Well, he seems like he's almost like a pimp, because he's got like this like stable
Yes.
of girls. But I don't know, and I know we're jumping around. We've jumped over like two or three sequences.
Different Wax Museum segments, so that's
the Marquis de Sade one is it's cool. It does. I am with Julia, as it raises all kinds of questions, admittedly, but I would have rather them somehow compounded the Dracula character in the Marquis de Sade, because I think you could have had all this like kinky sex stuff and still had it be a like a monster. I think having it be a sadistic human, kind of like, because like my favorite sequences in this are the Wolfman sequence and the Mummy sequence. Like, and, like this one, the only thing it really adds to the movie, other than, like I said, it does give the Sarah character some stuff, but I guarantee you could have worked that into the Dracula sequence somehow.
Sure, because she just come back to the same set.
Also, the thing with the Mummy is we had another 80s trope of the hard-boiled cop who
oh man, the cops in this are so 80s movie cops.
It's really wild.
It's played for that. I mean, the whole, everybody knows what movie they're making, right? And they give them the 80s detective sport coats.
He's got the day-old stubble.
Yeah, but also a lot of pounding the desk. Even in this, where it's not, you get out of my office, it's, you don't understand. It knows exactly what the movie that they're making is. Definitely, again, throwing everything, the kitchen sink, everything.
Yes.
I guess, when you get a chance to make a movie and I'm going to shoot my shot, and it's going to have all the stuff I love.
Yes.
And that's kind of, again, what the charm is.
I agree.
None of it all feels very genuine. Like, I'm just going to I love all of this. Why don't I just throw it in a blender? And there's something kind of cool about that. Even, there's even, we're kind of skipping back and forth, but, when they found out there's a secret society, who's there to stop the killers, or to stop.
A concept that could have used at least a couple of suggestions along the way that existed before they appeared.
Oh, yeah.
Just maybe one or two, like, something on the wires that there's a lot of chatter here. I don't know, some way to lay out that there's
well, what we get is, hey, tell the other people that.
Oh, that's right. You're right. There's a line. Yeah, Patrick Macnee. So yeah, they well, while we're going over the segments, the first two segments happen, then the kids run away, and then later there are two more segments, which is Sarah has hers, where she gets turned on by the Marquis de Sade, which is her thing, until she is rescued. So that's that. And then there's the detective, who goes in and gets sucked into because he's investigating, because he knows that people have been disappearing, and he thinks that the first time he visits the wax museum, he sees all the exhibits. We are not really given this very clearly the first time, but we see it in flashback. He sees all the exhibits. He begins to think that the people in the exhibits look like the missing people, so he goes back and he gets sucked into the mummy story. I actually really like the mummy story. Drew, you said it's one of your favorites. Do you want to explain it?
Well, I mean, gosh, like there's just so much in it that shows affection for older mummy movies. Like they key up Swan Lake, when the sequence stops, and like there's two direct bits. Like the professor stabs the mummy through with this like poker that it looks just like Peter Cushing stabbing the Christopher Lee mummy in the Hammer mummy movie. And then there's another nut throwback, the Hammer, where the mummy crushes the servant guy's head. Yes. And that's like a direct lift. And I can't remember which Hammer mummy movie that's from, but it's definitely in there. So that's when this movie is at its best is when it's wearing its influences pretty firmly on its sleeve. And I think the mummy sequence, even though it doesn't have any of our main characters in it, I think the mummy sequence probably shows that the best, because it's just, you can tell the people behind this really love monster movies. And as a person who also really loves monster movies, I just love seeing this, because I think about this a lot when I watch this, and again as I watch Monster Squad, which I think has a degree in common with this, is my favorite kind of, like, when you're taking like a classic character, I want a flavor of what's came before, but this has all that love of like the old stuff, but it's still very thoroughly like an 80s. It's not trying to convince you that it's a movie made before the 80s. It's still got a lot of 80s stuff in it, but it feels like again, they love these older mummy movies. And again, they show that again when they do the zombie sequence. They go in the black and white, like Night of the Living Dead. Yeah, and I just love that.
Yeah, that is a really good point. When they that's at a point where they're kind of jumping to try to avoid getting captured. The young people have gone back to the wax museum to try to avoid getting captured. They've just sort of moved from wax exhibit to wax exhibit, and at that one, it's literally in black and white, and they're being chased by the Night of the Living Dead ghouls, and it's great. It's really beautiful. Yes. So let's talk about the other plot, sort of the resolution part, which is they find a friend in Patrick Macnee, and they realize that I actually don't remember how exactly they plan to help their friends at all, or what exactly they plan to do. But Patrick Macnee gives them the plot, which is what Drew said earlier, which is the guy stole a bunch of artifacts. They each belong to all of these famous evil people. He's bringing them back because he has to, by sacrificing 18 people. He's nearly there. What I do not remember is why do they return to the museum? I'm talking about Mark and Sarah. Why do they return to the museum? Like, what do they think?
They're gonna burn it down.
Oh, they're gonna burn it down. Very good. They're not trying to rescue their friends. Thank you so much, because I completely could not remember what their point was in going there. But it becomes a big, cool chase scene, and that's great. There's another character that we didn't mention, but I should mention here before they burn down the museum, which is, we talked about the little person who is very funny and mocks all of them all the time. And then there's the lurch guy. Because David Warner has a very, very tall butler.
Very sensitive.
I'm sorry?
He's very sensitive.
He's very sensitive. He cries when you yell at him. And it's
like, he's like me. He gets his feelings hurt easily.
It's weirdly sweet. That was pretty great. So I liked all that.
I love that when Patrick Macnee shows up with the horde of people to take on, to make sure that no monsters get out. That the butler is one of them. That's hysterical. Zach Butler.
Great.
Yeah.
What I don't understand about the Geezer Brigade is Patrick Macnee, who I love his battle wheelchair, by the way. He's got a wheelchair that he's turned basically into a tank.
He's added like dragon wings to it and everything.
Yeah. But okay, so he's rich,
right?
And Billy from Gremlins is rich. Why not hire some like private security to come mess David Warner up?
Because they're not willing to die for it. The thing is, remember,
you
these
don't
guys,
tell them that they're going to be fighting monsters. You're going to tell them, hey, I want you to go beat up this wax museum owner.
right?
Really
But
good
that's
point.
not what
Yeah.
these guys are. I imagine there's something like the Watchers Council. You know, they're committed to this project and they're willing to die for it. And I think that's the thing. I think he only wants people who are going to stay, because anybody else might screw it up and let out. He said if even one of the monsters gets out, then that's it. And so I think he just needs only people who are completely devoted, including to the extent of which giving their own
I
lives.
accept your explanation. It is
When you're
that's-
80,
Right,
I
can I
guess
win
when
a-
you're
a
80
no
years
prize?
old, you don't have much less to
don't tell that to the 80-year-olds. I know they'd be very upset.
well, you know, I think you might be more inclined to be like, okay, I'm gonna go out shooting Dracula in the face.
Right. The reason they've broken in is because, you know, finally the ritual is happening. All the evil people have come to life. All the monsters from the exhibits have come to life. They're flooding into our world. Patrick Macnee says, all right, new goal. The new goal is kill all of them and burn this place down. Let nothing escape. That's it. And it's a big fight. And it's actually worth seeing. It's, you know, it's pretty good action. You know,
Now the fight was
It's
supposed
so
to be a lot
many
longer.
monsters.
The
Yes.
fight was supposed to be a lot longer, but they ran out of time and money, and so they had to do the whole thing in one day. But he had hoped to have like several days worth, so it actually
there's
wasn't
a lot
even.
going on already. I mean,
Yeah.
and yeah, they're, you know, they finally make their way to the boiling vats, and that's where David Warner is
you know,
dispatched.
Before we jump to that, though, like I want to take a moment and to appreciate you have Frankenstein's monster played by Kane Hodder. You've got pod people. You have like a witch doctor.
The baby from It's
yeah.
Alive.
It's alive.
Okay, the baby from It's Alive.
You know, you have, you know, all these creatures, you know, like the Invisible Man, you know, a space alien, you know, zombies, you know, this is just completely nuts that this guy filmed, and probably a movie that was fairly low budget. Like they really went for it. You have all these extras fighting each other. Like this is crazy and cool that this exists.
It seems really scary to me, by the way, just thinking about when you say it that way. This set's big, but it's not that big, and you got a lot of people fighting with a lot of weapons. I would be really actually scared of all of the choreography going, afraid that somebody's going to trip and stab themselves or you know, anything else. There's a heck of a lot of stuff, but that's a great scene. That's really good. It sucks that everybody in this Watcher Brigade, all of them, except for Deborah Foreman and Zach Galligan, dies. All of them. But all the monsters are killed, except for one exception. Joya, what is the exception?
The hand. Stupid hand.
Yes.
Attached hand. I knew that hand was going to be a problem.
Yeah, it's a zombie hand, and it scuttles away like a crab at the end. But yeah. And actually, that I am dying to know, by the way, how the sequel is going to work, because I don't think I mean,
not as well.
Really?
I like the sequel. I don't want to spend too much time talking about it. I like the sequel. I think it's fun. I don't think it's this is such a pure moot concept. You know, Julia said it best earlier. Like, this is such a good idea for a horror film, because you know, we already associate wax museums with the horror genre. You have this built-in idea that you can put these exhibits with these, you know, famous monsters of filmland in there. So like, this is just a pure great concept that you have here. The sequel goes off in its own direction, and it's still got some fun bits in it, but it's just not. And plus, David Warner is your bad guy. Like, you're not going to go, you know, wrong with that. Like, you know, he's just so fun, and he, you know, I you know, he's got this great line at the the end where they go, well, why are you doing that? Oh, why end the world? And he's just like, well, somebody has to. And like that kind of summarizes the movie to me tonally. Is like, this is a movie where the bad guy doesn't have to have any more rationale than that. And I don't know. I will again, I don't want to spend too much time going over the sequel because there's like so much here that I think is just a lot better. But I don't know. I will see what happens. We'll see
to it because I remember once you and we were talking, and I said it'd be really interesting if you had a world where you could just wander from one monster world to another. Like you could be in the Hammerscape, and then you just wander over the hill, and suddenly you're in like Ridley Scott's Alien universe or whatever. And you said, well, that sounds like the plot of Waxwork 2.
That is the plot of Waxwork 2, as it happens. There we go.
So we gotta check that out.
But it's I'm not saying I don't want to make it sound like it's not fun. It's just not as pure as like this. To me, has like a purity to it that the second one doesn't, and I'll get into why when we talk about Waxwork 2. I'm just happy to be talking about Waxwork, honestly, because we've been kicking around talking about the movie for years.
Yes.
Now.
Yeah, and I think it's important to watch because this is one that I think it gets referenced a great deal, and there haven't been a lot of Wax Museum movies have kind of fallen out of favor. Although there was a remake, I want to say it was Sarah Michelle Gellar, and that's about 20 years ago.
Oh, House of Wax.
Yes.
They did a remake with Paris Hilton.
Okay, well, that has to have been even more recent. But is that we're seeing, by the way?
I would say no, but other people, it seems to have a following.
Okay, well, rock on. Before we wrap up, I really do want to know what Wax Museum movies you would recommend. I mean, I think you should watch Waxwork, and I want to get our final thoughts. But before that, if you were to say, like, what other Wax Museum movies should you check out? Like, what would you guys think? We already did House of Wax, which is arguably the best one. It's a good one, yeah.
There's Mystery of the Wax Museum. This movie. There's Tourist Trap. Mystery of the Wax Museum.
Great. Yes.
Yeah. Mystery of the Wax Museum is actually House of Wax is a remake of Tourist. It's from the 30s. It's got Lionel Atwill in it. It's a fun movie as well.
Sounds fabulous.
But I think House of Wax is definitely the best Wax Museum horror film. Although this is probably my second favorite.
I have two that really stay with me. I think you're right, probably that those are that certainly House of Wax is a far superior film than what I'm going to say. But there is a movie called Terror in the Wax Museum with Ray Milland that gave me nightmares when I was, well, that's probably the wrong word for it. It stayed with me because I saw it as a teenager. Terror in the Wax Museum is on TV. And there's a dream sequence where John Carradine, dreams that the wax figures are coming after him. And so what they do is they've taken these, they're people in like wax makeup and stuff. And they move awkwardly, and they move, and the camera's really canted, and it's a strange, scary sequence. This is not a very good movie, but that is a great sequence, and it is scary, and that just stuck with me. 1973, that movie's from, but that's really cool. That's one that I would recommend. I think, and in fact, if you're into this, Riff Tracks has a version of that film. All right, we should get our final thoughts. And that gives us an opportunity, if there's anything that we've missed about Waxwork, this is a chance to bring it up, like something else that we didn't touch on. So it was Drew, Julia, Tony, and then I'll go. Drew, have we given enough time and appreciation to Waxwork? Is there anything that we've missed?
Oh, I mean, I'm sure there's probably stuff once we get off the call that I'll think of that I will go, man, I should have mentioned that. But it's a movie where John Steed gets his head torn off by a werewolf. So I don't we shouldn't really maybe get that over analytical about it. I think that we've probably taken I could talk about this movie for hours, but we've probably taken the appropriate amount of time, because this isn't, I'm realistic. I don't think this is like an all-time cinematic classic or anything, but I do think it's a really good time. And I think if you like 80s horror films, plus you like classic monsters, I think this is going to hit like the sweet spot for you because like it's got all those things. So that's probably why I enjoy it so much. And it is really 80s. I love the late 80s fashion. I love like all the teased up hair and everything. But that might alienate some people, and again, it is really hammy, but I just think it's so much fun. Like I really, every time I watch this movie, I get a kick out of it. And right up to the point where I love that it ends with Leslie Gore. I love that it ends with "It's my party and I cry if I want to." Like that like right down to that. I just think it's
that's a really good point.
The tone may be all over the place, but this movie does have like the one agenda of entertaining you, and it does that amply well.
That's well said. Julia, what are your thoughts?
I think we covered most of what I thought about when I was going through. I think there's some really neat sets and costumes. I think the scene, well, all of the scene, like every scene, I was about to say the scene with the werewolf is super disturbing. I think but there's several scenes that I just found really disturbing, and I mean, it's a horror movie, so that they're horrific. I think, I can't think of anything else that I want to add. So I think, if you're not too disturbed by gore and you want to see something that's creative and interesting, then sure, I'd recommend it.
Tony, what are your thoughts?
I enjoy it. It's a little messy, again, like I said, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. There's a certain glee to that. And you could tighten that up, but you might lose some of the I'm going to make everything kind of feel that it has. It's very tropey, but again, that's the nature of exactly the movie that they were making. There's a lot of great cast members. It's cool to see all these just random actors that you like. Oh, hey, look. I like how gleeful it is in exactly what it's doing. Some people may not like how broad it is.
Yeah.
But I think that it has a certain charm about it, and maybe it's just it's partially nostalgia. Like when I see this is so firmly a 1988 movie that when I watch it, I remember, oh, this is a movie aimed directly at me when I was that age. Like,
yes,
it's doing everything that I wanted when I wanted to rent this on VHS because I couldn't go to the theater to see it at the time. So I enjoy all of that. It is campy, it's a little schlocky sometimes, but that's okay. There's way worse sins in cinema, and at no point do I feel that it's disingenuous. The credits show that too. Like, where they're giving credit to various horror directors and saying, hey, you help, you influenced me to make this film. I think that's great. And you can't go wrong with the effects as well. They're done really well. So, they spent the money in the right place, in my opinion, also.
I think that sort of shaggy dog, love for genre, the sort of that kind of, it lends it a legitimacy that to me makes it sort of lovable. And so I can totally keep playing this, even though, again, not crazy about the tone, but it's fine. And I can even get into a little bit when I understand sort of what it's going for. Yeah.
You see a lot of movies.
Oh yeah.
You see a lot of movies that again, I don't want to rant too much, but where they'll do this kind of ironically, like, haha, it's an 80s quote unquote movie.
Yeah.
This is just a movie that's contemporary with everything that's going on and going, I love all of this. I want to make my version of all of this. And occasionally it winks at the camera, but it's more about, what if I made all the things I really enjoy?
Yeah.
Mixing all your favorite cereal together.
Sure. That's wonderful. All right. Well, that's our discussion of Waxwork. And if there's anything that we forgot to talk about, we're going to get to hit on it again when we return next week with Waxwork 2. But now let's turn over to, if you have anything, I know everybody's been super busy, so you might not have anything. Let's turn over to endorsements. Whatever you've been reading, watching, just want people to pay attention to. Drew, what do you have for us?
Well, I mean, there was a lot of stuff unleashed on streaming right now. Like Cobra Kai was back. That was cool.
Oh, yeah.
Sabrina is back. That's cool. But the thing that's really actually strangely been the thing that I've been watching the most of this last week is a YouTube channel called Defunct Land, which is about amusement park rides that no longer exist. So like you'll have stuff about Universal Studios, the various Disney parks, various Six Flags parks, and this guy gives like histories on these rides that are gone. And he's also got a long-term goal of recreating these rides in a VR setting eventually. So like Defunct Land is eventually going to be a real place where or a virtual place where you can theoretically, visit these rides. But even if you're not into the technological aspect of this, like just hearing the various histories of these different, amusement park rides and how they were developed and put together and everything is fascinating. And, I like tourist trap things and I like amusement parks and I have it on that level, but some of them also like tie into various different movie franchises. Like there's one on the Ghostbusters ride that they used to have at Universal Studios, and they talk about that, and they talk about the Back to the Future ride and things like that. The King Kong ride that used to exist. These things are of interest to people who listen to the show, because there's that crisscross into various different genre stuff. Like I never realized how close Disneyland had got to having a ride themed around Ridley Scott's Alien, for example. Like very close as it happens.
What's it called again?
Defunct Land. All one word.
This sounds like something I'm going to be spending a lot of time on.
It's really
Katarina too, probably.
Yeah, it's a YouTube channel.
Really cool.
I've got to see this. This sounds great.
It's been eating up an exuberant amount of my time over the Christmas break. So I just become a big fan of it. So yeah, check it out.
That sounds really fantastic. Julia, what do you have for us?
Oh my gosh, so many things. You said this thing about we've been all super busy. I'm like, no, actually, we've been on staycation. So I've watched a lot of things and taken in a lot of things. First of all, I don't know, Jason, if I'm going to steal one of yours, but Jason and I watched a British series called Brief Encounters that's written by a friend of his and her writing partner, and it's so funny and great. I just really enjoyed it. It's about these British ladies who sell like lingerie and it's like like passion parties. I don't know if you guys have heard of that, but it's they sell things that are what do you call it? Marital aids is what they call them.
Marital aids, yeah.
Yes, and so basically it's like party style. And anyway, it's super fun. It's just really clever, and we really enjoyed it. I also binge watched over the last 2 days Bridgerton, which is the Shondaland version of Downton Abbey. Basically, it's like Downton Abbey meets Grey's Anatomy. It's very, very excellent show about again another British. It's British. It's got a bunch of romances and drama and gorgeous costumes and sets and props. Everything's just beautiful. Really enjoyed that. And then I really enjoyed watching the movie Soul, the animated movie. So cute. I think it's Pixar, right? Not Disney.
Yes.
I think it's Pixar. And so good. And then I listened to the audiobook of Jason's book, Bookman, written under the name
Night of the Bookman.
Night of the Bookman, sorry. Night of the Bookman, and both the book and the audiobook and the performance by the person who reads it are great. I really enjoyed that. I got through it like in 2 days also. So many great things that I enjoyed, and I'm happy to share.
Wow, great stuff.
Who reads the book?
The book is read. The book is read by Lee Freiling, who is
a young woman. I was to say young woman. I don't know if she's young, but she sounds youngish. But she's you said she's an actress and a like.
Everybody's younger compared to me, so yes,
right, and me as well.
She's an actress and drama coach.
Except people who are the same age as you.
That is true. And people who are older. But she does such a good job, and it is so cool. And because I have to start working like right away on the second book in that series. I'm actually, one of the first things I do this week, because I'm going to start just getting ready this week, is I'm going to listen to the audiobook and just sort of re-immerse myself in the world. And I'm excited about that.
Yeah, it was super fun. I really enjoyed it.
Cool. Tony, what about you?
I have a few things. One is a friend of mine's movie, The Next Kill, is out on Amazon Prime. It's definitely one of those, everybody put their heart and soul into it. Low budget kind of guerrilla filmmaking at times. They got cameos from like James Hong as a cameo, a short or short performance. I'm actually in it in the background.
No. Awesome.
That's
I
awesome.
was a cameraman, like a news cameraman.
Cool.
And when we filmed it, it was definitely like, hey, let's just go to this building. We're going to film for, 30 minutes to an hour. And I guess the camera was convincing enough that there was a homeless guy across the street. Like, you guys should be filming the real story. It's over here. Okay, man.
That's awesome.
So I think that's like an interstitial that's in, playing on a TV screen. But the movie's called The Next Kill, and a lot of friends are in it. Drummer in Deserts of Mars, my friend who's a drummer in my band, Morgan, is in it. But Austin filmmakers making a passion project. It took a while because you do this on the side, and Mike McCutcheon did an awesome job. All these friends of mine are in it, have done things. So I would be remiss, even if I wasn't in it, to not recommend it. It's one of those things, your mileage may vary on it, but I think it's just really cool, and I definitely want to support my friends making kind of underground cinema, low budget but high impact kind of stuff that they want to make. I think that's really cool, getting out there and actually like finishing a thing is not easy.
Yeah.
I unfortunately didn't go to any of the rap party, get to go to any of the rap parties or screenings or whatever. So I still need to watch it. I've seen segments, but I still need to watch it all put together. But I think it's cool. In addition to that, so definitely check out The Next Kill, because I just, I think you should support your friends. That's big to me. But I noticed Blood of Heroes with Rutger Hauer is also back on Amazon Prime. It was also called Salute the Jugger. So if you want to see Rutger Hauer in a post-apocalyptic football kind of game, or where they play with a dog skull and fight each other with chains and stuff, it's a crazy movie. I think I saw it, I want to say it was like when Netflix was first starting streaming, and it just got things, and just stuff just started showing up. And you're like, what's this? And I don't know how I missed it from the VHS days or even cable days, but it was originally called Salute the Jugger, but I guess people were like, who knows what the hell that is? You'll find it as The Blood of Heroes. If you like crazy post-apocalyptic stuff and Rutger Hauer, this has that in spades. I think it's pretty cool. I just noticed it was back on Prime, and of course I had to watch it. And then also, in the interest of friends and cool stuff, our friend Jim Towns, my friend James from college, and Scott Kelly have a new podcast, the Borgo Pass Horror Podcast.
Isn't that a great title? That's a wonderful title. Yeah.
So
has it gone up yet? I thought they were laying down several episodes, and if it's out, I want to listen to it. I feel so crazy.
Well, they're recording stuff. I was just talking today. The Facebook page is up, but I'm really just stoked that Jim and Scott are doing this. It's really cool. And it's kind of strange because since we reconnected, he's been in he's written stuff for Castle of Horror anthologies, and he's written his own stuff. Did a video for Deserts of Mars. All around cool guy, and we just randomly started hanging out virtually again over the past few years, and I think really started talking once. Jason, you had did an interview for one of his books, right?
That's right. Yes.
So again, it's life's weird. We had lost touch a little bit between college, and I had a few friends like that, but it's been really cool hanging out virtually and talking movies and stuff. So, and I know that he's really passionate about horror. We've always we hung out all the time, watched movies in each other's rooms and the dorms, and then when I had moved out and was in Savannah, had an apartment, and so it's been really cool, and I'm really stoked about their podcast. And it is a great name, like
no kidding, yeah.
Pretty cool. And you're kind of what it gives you a good idea of what they're going to be covering.
Yes.
I like that a lot. So,
I love both those guys. So Jim Towns and Scott Kelly are both super cool. I can't wait to hear what they have in store. Sounds like a blast.
That's part of my New Year's resolution. Is let's all promote the cool people doing cool stuff, because there's a lot of jerks out there. So the people who are trying to be good and trying to do good things, we have to work like 5 times harder to counteract that. So we all kind of have to stick together and try to help each other out and just make cool stuff. And that's what I'm trying to do more of, is find the people making cool stuff, and let's all tell everybody else that we know about it.
Yeah.
That's how we win.
Yeah. Very good. My endorsement is not nearly as specific as that, but just today I was, in the sunroom, and I pulled out the Viewmaster reel.
Solarium.
Yes.
Sounds cooler if you say, I don't know. It sounds so much more.
It's the conservatory. No, it's the library. No, what is it? Conservatory.
Yeah, the solarium. That's right.
Solarium.
No,
I think of solarium as being the thing with the pool.
That's true, but it has the sun coming through the ceiling too, But anyway, we don't. So this is just a regular. I don't know. It's just a sunny part.
It's a sunroom. It's just a bunch of very hot room in the summer.
Yeah. Anyhow, perfect for this though. I pulled out the Viewmaster reels, which I got a bunch of new reels around the time of when COVID began. And I just love it. I find it to be very, I don't know, it's so old school that it kind of slows down your heart rate just to put in a Viewmaster reel and click, click, click.
Oh, it's so cool. I had if you find the one with not Escape to Witch Mountain.
Are you sure?
The second one. Witch Mountain.
Return from Witch Mountain.
Yeah. I had Viewmaster for that. That was pretty cool. Yeah, those Viewmaster, the way they broke everything out into 3D was fascinating.
Yeah, it's wonderful. And I went on eBay and I just bought a couple of collections where people just had all kinds of stuff, like everything from X-Men cartoon to like Mork and Mindy. I got Mork and Mindy Viewmaster reels. I haven't even looked at them yet.
Awesome.
I haven't gotten to them yet. I have no idea what it's like, but yes. So I'm super excited. And anyway, I recommend this. Get yourself a cheap Viewmaster reel, off of Amazon. You don't need one with batteries. You just want one with the little clicky lever, and then just go to town at eBay, buying up some old reels, and you will find it just acts as a wonderful calming thing. It's like a cup of Darjeeling. It's just, I'll look at the colors. I love it.
Cool.
So, Viewmaster.
I love the callback to our adult dorky tea conversation before we started recording.
Yes. Yeah. So,
Castle of Horror, we also talk about tea.
But
we don't subject you guys to it, except for just the Darjeeling reference.
Although we might start a tea podcast where we review tea.
Yes.
Meet us in the solarium as we discuss tea.
That sounds like that stupid like over the over decorated room that Kate Beckinsale walks into in the first vampire movie that she did. With all
Underworld.
Yeah, and all the frou-frou vampires are sitting there drinking their tea and just
Oh, that scene always just annoys the hell out of me. Like, I like the movie overall, but the fact that all the vampires are these tittering ninnies,
yes,
group of vampires, like, who are getting shit done and kicking ass, and they come home, and all the other vampires are just like playing cards and going, "Oh, look, it's the action vampires!" Whoa!
I have a confession
every time.
I have a confession to make about Underworld.
Okay.
Yeah. I have somehow managed to see every single one of those movies, and I hate all of them.
That's really funny.
I just hate them.
I saw the first one. That's all. I
I like them okay, but that scene, I just got really annoyed because you have a collection of vampires that are kick-ass being badasses, and you've got this other collection that seem to be the most popular ones who just are wasting time playing cards and then laughing. Like, actually, like, look, it's the people taking care of business.
Maybe
Okay, so give me some
maybe
advice.
we should do that movie at some point,
here's my
because like
if I'm going to be a weird like completist where I start and I don't stop, which underrated that might not even be the right word. Which series do I do? Underworld or Resident Evil?
oh god, Resident Evil is awful.
One.
Like,
I like the first. I like to actually really like the first Resident Evil.
I
movie.
don't think any of the sequels are increasingly painful though.
But I love the fact that they've kept Mila Jovovich like employed.
Yeah, but
For-
like she's
I mean,
totally
for
wasted.
20 years.
Like she's totally wasted. Like
Hmm.
honestly, Underworld, because I feel like there's less of them, even though I don't like either.
Right.
I personally would rather do other movies, and I think there's a lot of good bits in a lot of those movies.
Hmm.
But I wouldn't. Me personally, I would pick something I enjoy more.
Right.
Although there was, I think it was the second or third one I actually was surprised with, and I can't remember. But I would.
Jason,
There are other movies. There are other series I would rather do. To be honest,
I'm not making you guys do
Jason,
this stuff.
yeah, Jason. Well, I would review the first Underworld simply because I think it would be a fun conversation. But Jason, if you're going to find like if you're gonna, it's funny calling those movies contemporary now because they're
Sure.
a decade old, but.
Right.
If you're gonna go in and watch like a contemporary horror franchise, there's stuff that I think you would like. So like watch Penny Dreadful first. You still haven't watched that. Like there's stuff that you would like so much more. That's
All right.
yeah, like if you're gonna dig your heels into something that's come out in the last 20 years, you know, those are not the two things I would say start with.
All right, fair. I actually do say though, it is kind of fun when you get a ridiculous series going, how it gets weirder with every, you know, with every chapter if they attempt to kind of have continuity going. I'm thinking of like the Doll Man stuff and everything where you just keep growing the mythology and it gets stranger and stranger.
Well, you know, like my problem with Underworld is narratively they went with the vampires, but when you watch those movies, the werewolves have a much more compelling story because they're basically the Rebel Alliance, and you're stuck watching the Empire. And you know, like so like I feel like if you were to remake those movies but make it about the werewolves, I think they would be infinitely more watchable, because it's always better to you always want to root for the underdog. I can't believe I just said that in talking about werewolves.
Yes, but I hear you, and that's an excellent. That's
there's a movie that hasn't been made, a werewolf movie called Underdogs.
Yeah, why hasn't
another fire shark or lava
you
shark?
could write that like this weekend. You could just get, hey, it took 3 days to write Waxwork. I bet you could beat that. Go.
I have entirely too much to do over the next. I just finished writing a rough draft of a book. I took a couple of days off, and I have to go back and finish another pretty.
Well, put it on the slate.
Project.
Add it to the slate.
Yeah.
Underdogs.
Underdog.
I actually have. It's funny. I have like my Google Keep app on my phone, and it has like to do and to write lists, and the list just keeps getting longer because ideas will come up, and I'll just put it on the list.
Well, I actually have.
It's like, put it on the list. So, yeah,
I actually have an idea, having now read through the Castle of Horror book, which I should have made one of my endorsements. I'm terrible.
And yet you're mentioning it now, so that's not bad.
The Castle of Horror book is really good. I read through it, but it actually sparked inspiration for something that I would like to talk to you about at some point. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Sure. Absolutely. By the way, the Monster Movie Happy Hour actually called out that book. How cool
That
is
was
that?
so sweet. It looks beautiful. I have not read through the whole thing, but it looks beautiful.
My parents are going to be ordering. My parents are going to be ordering a copy soon.
Sweet.
So.
I want to shout out to Incher for his amazing design work.
The cover, I especially like the cover with the sort of Frankenstein microphone thing is like so like I want a T-shirt of that. Like I think that's such a
we need to 3D print that microphone stand.
yeah, really.
That would be amazing.
And Jason, thank you for all your hard work editing that book.
Yes.
Oh well, I live for this stuff, and as everybody knows, it's so funny. Lee Freiling, when she did the audiobook of Night of the Bookman, she found more edits. The fact of the matter is, Castle Bridge is a small shop, right? So there is just you're always finding more stuff. So as we grow this year, one thing I'm going to do,
Even like huge. I mean, even books by huge publishers, I find stuff that's like copy edit mistakes.
oh sure,
So,
I've made my peace with it. Otherwise, you just never sleep. You just be
Yeah.
like thinking about it all the time. But
I'll be reading
but,
the Washington Post, and I'll be like, "Oh, typo."
Sure.
Score.
Absolutely.
I also like, Sean, who got a copy earlier. I think he got a copy for us.
Oh, way before us. Yes,
Called it out.
absolutely.
One of his favorite ones. I really had forgotten about it in a way. But he called out Count Yorga.
Yeah.
And that was at a time when we had people in the chat as well.
Yes.
And it was such a cool thing to go, hey, I was part of that episode. That was such a neat thing to kind of talk about on Facebook.
We could, Tony, we should maybe consider, we could switch over to we should investigate what kind of technology out there might allow us to do a chat room again.
Yeah, I think it's better for hangout episodes. I do like as long as sometimes we ramble, I feel remiss in calling it focused. But as we are now, we're talking about Underworld and other stuff. But I do like.
We're also technically done.
Yeah. Right. I think that having that on occasion would be a really cool thing, like doing some side episodes that have that feature.
Or what if we had like X amount of episodes a year where we had crowd or people could do or just chats, like group chats or something.
Yeah,
I'm
interested in that. And if the listener if anybody has actually listened this far into this show and not moved on, we would clearly we're casting about for ideas. We want more audience involvement. Want to give people a chance to hang out. What works? We'd love your ideas, and we'll kind of throw it around together, and I think that's something to try to pull off this year. So cool. I'm so thankful that you guys are back and that we're back, and we will see you all next week for Waxwork 2. Have a great evening.
Waxwork 2 Lost in Time.
Lost in Time with the ballet dancer, right? It's
Alexander Duzanoff. I'm probably mispronouncing that.
I actually cannot remember, but he's the bad guy in Die Hard, the second bad guy, the one who
the lieutenant bad guy.
Yeah, the spoiler is, major spoiler about him at the end of that film. He's great. So yes. All right, I'll talk to you guys later. Thank you very much.
Good night, everyone.
Bye.